While it is true that material culture represents a concept that was first in the mind of its creator, still the problem is distinguishing whether the concept originates in the natural world versus originates purely from the imagination of those who created the object. Put differently, was there something in the external environment that originated the thoughts of those who created the artifact, or was the artifact a product purely of the creator's imagination? I'm going to use Malta as an example again. Depicted in this slide, you see three images. One is of a megalithic temple complex called Menidra on the western coast of the island of Malta. And you also see to the right a statue, a stone statue, an artifact found within one of the burial chambers of a we call kind of like a Venus figure, or they call them the fat ladies of Malta. Interesting enough, if you look at the statue and compare it to the structure and the way the temple is built, there seems to be some similarities. And it is thought that these figurines represent a form of sacred feminine that was the deity of the ancient Maltese people during the temple period. And there's this idea that the temples themselves also embody this sacred feminine by essentially mimicking the statutes of these deities. But interestingly enough, also found within these temple structures were these stone slabs indicating that wheat was being processed within them. And we could tell this because of the grinding marks that were found on the stone slabs and the protein of wheat, the wheat proteins that are found within the crevices made by grinding the wheat within the stone. This is really interesting because these temple complexes may actually be served multiple purposes for the Maltese community. They were both ritual spaces as well as sorts of community centers where food was processed and redistributed to the community that the temple complex served. The bottom left picture are phallic structures found within the subterranean tombs in Malta. And all this together suggests this preoccupation with fertility and reproduction and the cycles of life, and a relationship of burying and rising from the ground, planting and growing and harvesting, which may have been a significant preoccupation for the people during this period. One of the things I find interesting about the way the temples are structured is that if you think about the entrance to the temples compared to the statutes of what we think are the deities of Malta, one could see or interpret the entrance essentially as the vaginal canal into the sacred feminine, where the raw materials, the wheat from the harvest, are brought into the temple. They are processed, and then they're delivered out to the community as nourishment in a sort of ritualized way that represents the beliefs, the spiritual beliefs of the community. So in this sense, the economy of the economy of the Maltese people during the temple period is intricately related to their ritual practice and spiritual beliefs and their cosmology and worldview. Lastly, I would like to just shift gears for a moment and talk about the shift between the Paleolithic and the Neolithic. The major shift between the Paleolithic and Neolithic involves the development of agriculture. Specifically in the Neolithic, we call it the agricultural revolution. And this allowed for a lot of different changes to take place in various communities throughout the world once agriculture became a reality for the people who incorporated it within their lifestyle. This allowed, for example, the people to become more sedentary and for the development of permanent settlements versus temporary settlements found in hunting and gathering societies. We also start seeing changes within the iconography and the religious symbolism within the population between the Paleolithic and Neolithic, as well as providing opportunities for people to begin to specialize into different crafts because with food surplus comes the ability to spend your time doing other things. And because of that, we start seeing different types of trades being refined and different types of artwork being refined over time throughout the Neolithic. However, there's this curious discovery in Turkey called Göbekli Tepe. And depicted in this slide is the megalithic site of Göbekli Tepe. And it is believed to essentially date to around 10,000 BC to 10,500 BC. That's 12,500 years ago. And why is this significant? Because essentially this megalithic site was constructed during a time when we believe that people did not invent agriculture. That generally the earth was populated by hunters and gatherers. And this challenges our entire timeline of human civilization because it is believed that for something of this size to be built, there had to have been a sizable number of people to be utilized in the workforce to construct such a monumental undertaking. These stones are megalithic in size, several tons each. While it's hard to see in the picture, uh, these different pillars dwarf an average size human. And also found with on these pillars are complicated carvings of different animals and different symbols, some of which we believe represent different constellations within the sky. In fact, there have been several different archaeoastronomers who have studied Göbekli Tepe and considered some of the astronomical alignments with regard to how these temples were constructed. This is peculiar. Again, we would expect to find such a site during a time when agriculture was in full swing. But here, this is coming off the Ice Age, essentially, when people were generally hunting and gathering. And so it challenges everything we have come to know about the general timeline of cultural evolution and the evolution and of societies in the ancient world. Later on in the module, I do provide 2 videos with regard to Göbekli Tepe. I think they're worth watching. Definitely watch these videos because this site is particularly significant, because it does challenge our understanding of what happened between the Paleolithic and the Neolithic and the agricultural revolution.